Hello and welcome back to the Russian Football News Predictions League. This has been officially the longest break since we started 6 seasons ago, or 5 seasons ago, I think it was. But football's back, and already we're coming across some roadblocks, aren't we? Of course, this wouldn't be Russian football without it. Brief bit of headline news. Khimki have successfully applied for their Premier League licence today, so they should, in theory, be taking a place in the Premier League, although, as previous experience goes, you can never be quite sure what happens in Russian football, so I wouldn't count chickens just yet on that. But more directly, Rostov. 6 Rostov players have been confirmed as positive with coronavirus, which means that the entire Rostov squad and staff must go on a 14-day quarantine as per the regulations. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means Rostov won't be playing any games for 2 weeks. And Rostov's first game is on Friday night against Sochi. So that will not be going ahead unless there is some quite extraordinary turnaround of news, which would be irresponsible at best and, it would be irresponsible. So Rostov on Friday, and unless there is some dramatic change of events, will not be happening, nor will it be in the future. So 7 matches to preview. So we're going to have to crack on, otherwise we won't keep this under 15 minutes, which is what we have to do, of course. A few bits of transfer news will drop in with each match preview, but first up, we have on Friday, and this is the first game back at 6 o'clock Moscow time. So 4 o'clock UK time is Krylia Sovietov Samara at home to Akhmat Grozny. Now this is a very, very important game. More so, especially given the news of Khimki's Premier League registration, because what that means is Khimki are very likely to go up to the Premier League, which means 2 clubs will now come down from the Premier League. So these 2 are in the bottom 2. Krylia Sovietov on 22 points, Akhmat at bottom on 20, and they both need to get to 23 points, which is Rubin Kazan and Orenburg just above them. So what news do we have? Well, Alexander Anyukov has retired from football. He will now be a coach at Zenit, I believe it is. Serjan Mihailovic has left as his contract expired, and got a few cases like that. For Akhmat, Wilker Angel at the back is suspended. Magad Musalov is possibly injured. Yet to have confirmation on that. So what do we see happening here? Well, quite frankly, I don't see anything other than a draw. Away from home, Akhmat Grozny have drawn 5 of their last 9 overall, but they have only lost once in the last 4 away from home. So that's encouraging for them at least. For Krylia, they've won just once at home since July. That kind of says all you need to know. They really have been desperately poor, and of course they are without Alexander Sobolev, who scored 10 goals for them the first half of the season, which is almost half of their total still, 22 goals. So I see a draw, and quite frankly, I don't see much more than a 0-0. I just do not see that being exciting. But a point is actually not the worst for both of them. They can't afford to lose. Moving on, like I say, Sochi Rostov has been postponed. I'm still waiting for actual technical confirmation of that, but it can't go ahead if Rostov are in quarantine, so we will skip past that one. And we will move on to Saturday. Ural Yekaterinburg at home to Rubin Kazan. Now, Alexander Zuyev has also been reported as having positive coronavirus. I haven't myself seen the official sources confirm it, but it's very unlikely that a news source would completely fabricate that. So we'll move on, shall we? Ural are at the moment 10th in the table on 25 points. Rubin Kazan are 14th, 1 place above the relegation zone. The relegation zone, remember, was just 2. We're not having relegation promotion playoffs, so 13th and 14th are safe as things. Well, they will be safe. Rubin Kazan are 14th. They did win their last game, but they are the lowest scorers in the league. They only scored 12 in 22 games. That is quite an achievement, if you ask me, to score that few. Ural Yekaterinburg, on the other hand, have the worst defensive record. They've conceded 41 goals in 22 games, which is also mightily impressive. So again, how do we see this one going? I mean, my heart, of course. I'm a Ural Yekaterinburg reporter. I'm very fond of the team. I've followed them very closely for 6 years now. But Mikhail Merkelov has left Ural to join Rubin Kazan. Nikolai Dimitrov has retired, citing business interests in his native Bulgaria. Petrus Bumal has left the club. I mean, these are first team players and good first team players as well. Pavel Pogrebniak is still. He's in training. He's recovered from coronavirus, but uncertain how he will feature. David Karayev, who was on loan at CSKA Moscow over the winter break, but has been playing in the Ural Povolzhia PFL division, is a good striker, very active striker. He's joined Ural, but he won't be able to play because they can't register him until next season. So we may well see in the next day or two that Rubin Kazan will say, well, look, we've got more players who are positive with coronavirus. They have already had Konstantin Pliev, Nikolai Poyarkov, Sultan Murad Bakayev, I believe, as well, who have recovered from COVID-19. So I have to wait and see what happens there. So how do we see this one going? Well, Ural, they've only won one in the last 9 league games. It's not great. The last time out, they were absolutely hammered, 7-1, the highest score, heaviest defeat of this season so far, away to Zenit St. Petersburg back in March. They haven't won at home since August. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are, that is terrible. Rubin Kazan, their victory, their last game was a win away to Arsenal Tula, who are 6th in the table, or 7th in the table, sorry. Very impressive result. But that was their first league win in 8 months. They are, like I say, struggling to score goals. So again, I don't see a great deal happening here. Rubin Kazan, to be fair, have not conceded that many. Only conceded 22, which is the second lowest total outside the top 5. They are relatively stoic, shall we say. And Ural have lost one of their key creators in Nikolai Dimitrov. And even Pogrebniak is considered a first-team player now. He's played quite a lot this season. And Ural are relatively safe, you'd have thought. Very unlikely they're going to drop down. There's still Tambov, Sochi, Orenburg and Rubin Kazan between them and the relegation zone. So a point would do them fine. And also you've got to bear in mind that unless there is a second wave very quickly, they have a Russian Cup quarter-final. Because theirs was the only quarter-final that didn't get completed before the pandemic wipes everything out. They have to play that in about 10 days' time. So they might have half an eye on that as well. So what do we see? I would love to say a win for Ural, but I quite frankly see a draw. In terms of the scoreline, I think I'm actually going to go for 1-1 in this. Rubin Kazan, although they haven't scored many, they are playing better than their goal scoring record suggests, and Ural do have other players who can score. Otman El Kabir is a great provider. Eric Bukfalvi is the talisman. So and Andrei Panyukov as well up front is a decent player. So I'm going to go for 1-1, but certainly a draw. Okay, Arsenal Tula at home to Spartak Moscow. Now Spartak have been very up and down under Dominika Tedesco. 10 games in charge in the league, won 4, drawn 2, lost 4 as well. But that is all part of getting to gel with a new manager. Now he's only signed a 1.5-year contract with Spartak, which I always thought that concerned me slightly because it showed that he's not necessarily committed long term. However, I did speak to him in the post-match press conference of the Spartak Dynamo game. Spartak were very impressive. Alex Kraul was out of this world in midfield, and he has a very clear plan what he wants. He's moved Mikhail Ignatov down to the second team to get more game time. Nail Umyarov, I think, is edging back towards fitness, may be available. So he's got positive selection problems. Arsenal Tula in 7th on 28 points, level on points with Spartak Moscow, and 8th. Spartak actually have a better goal difference, but it's on head-to-head record that you decide level on points in Russia. They are 2 points behind Dynamo Moscow in 6th. Now, 6th place could be a Europa League place if Zenit win the Russian Cup, because Zenit will go to the Champions League from the league placement, which means the winner of the Russian Cup, that place in the Europa League, goes to 6th place in the league, not the runner-up in the Russian Cup. So 6th place, very possibly, very likely, to be honest, could be Europa League. So Spartak, they could get into potentially direct contention. I see Spartak winning this. I think they look very, very impressive despite losing 4 games under Tedesco. They've only lost once in the last 5 away games and have kept 3 clean sheets in that run. So I'm going to go for a Spartak win. It's not actually desperately relevant, to be honest, because Andrei Schürrle was relatively useless after his first few games and he's left the club. Well, his loan has not been extended. So I'm going to go for... what do we see here? Kind of fancy quite a few wins, for quite a few goals here. So I'm going to go for Spartak to score twice. Will Arsenal Tula score? No, I think it's going to be 2-0 to Spartak. I'm confident that they'll win this one. Okay, moving on. CSKA against Zenit. Now, this is the big one. And this is the big one. 2 top 5 clubs. Zenit are all but guaranteed the title. With 9 points clear with 8 games to go. CSKA Moscow on terrible run of form. Ilzak Akhmetov and Alan Zagoyev yet again. Both out injured. So that's a minor blow for them. Wagner Love was rumoured very, very close, apparently, to rejoining CSKA, the greatest foreigner to play in the Russian Premier League in the modern era, at least. Emmanuel Mamano is back in training for Zenit, but unlikely to start. But that's, again, is not much of a problem because they have Yaroslav Rakitsky and Branislav Ivanovic are their first choice centre backs quite comfortably, so I don't think it will really affect them. Zenit, well, they're Zenit, they're the top goal scorers, conceded the fewest, won the most games. CSKA have only won twice in their last 10 games, I think it is. And Zenit have won all 4 of their last 4 away games. So I really can't see anything other than a Zenit win here. I'm going to go for 2-1 though, because CSKA do have the likes of Arnold Sigurdsson and Nikola Vlasic, their top goal scorer on 7, who has had the most shots on target in the Premier League this season. He's attempted the most shots, I think it is. Either way, they have a threat. So I'm going to go for 2-1 to Zenit, which could all but seal the title, to be honest. Next, Ufa at home to Tambov. Right, we're going to try and go through a bit more quickly now. It's not really the most exciting game, this. Tambov actually have collected the most points in the last 9 games, other than Zenit and Dynamo Moscow. So they flew up all the way up to 11th. Ufa are in 9th. Ufa on 27 points, Tambov on 25. Both relatively safe at this point, you'd say, from relegation. Tambov very strongly rumoured to be merging with Nizhny Novgorod at the end of the season if they stay in the Premier League, because Nizhny Novgorod, the city, doesn't have a top flight team, but Tambov they still don't have a stadium that meets Premier League requirements, so it suits the businessmen, shall we say. But their chief executive has said they are still intending to move back to Tambov end of the season. But what do we see happening here? Quite frankly, I see a draw. Dull. Not really much to go on here. I'm going to go for 1-1 just to cover our bases, but to be honest, it could easily be a 0-0. But I'll go for 1-1 just in case. Lokomotiv at home to Orenburg. Well, Lokomotiv, big changes here. Yuri Siemin, the club legend who has won titles with them. He's managed them on 4 separate occasions and been with them as a player, and I believe even been acting as a director at some point. He has left the club. His contract expired and it was not renewed. Marko Nikolic, a Serbian manager who has won titles in Serbia and in Hungary, very highly rated, 40 years old as well. So Siemin, 33 years older. Bit of a shock. Benedikt Hurvides has left as well. Jefferson Farfan still not back in full fitness, and Anton Miranchuk is out injured too. But Orenburg, they are looking like they've been cut adrift by the Gazprom family. Georgi Despotovic has left at the end of his contract. Filip Rogic, Alexander Dovnia, who admittedly was not quite first choice, but still a senior player. All 3 have left. I think new manager bounce. He's had time over this pandemic. Well, his brief stay at the end of this pandemic, anyway. I think Lokomotiv are very strong favourites to win this. They're second at the moment, level on points with Krasnodar, but a head-to-head record. That Champions League place, second place gets you group stage football. Third gets you into the qualifiers. So they're going to be fighting tooth and nail for that. Orenburg at the wrong end of the table. Yes, they'll be battling for survival, but I just don't think they have the quality. So I'm going to go for a Lokomotiv win, relatively comfortable. And you know what? I'm going to go for a 3-0 win, which is a bit unlike me because I don't think Lokomotiv are high scorers naturally. But there we go. I'm confident. And then finally we have Krasnodar at home to Dynamo Moscow. Krasnodar, well, they have only lost once once at home since October 2018. They're very, very solid at home. They've drawn quite a few this season, though. But the last time out, they did lose 2-0 away to Sochi. Sochi, admittedly, in very good form, but still, it's Sochi. They're not the most advanced side, you could argue. Dynamo Moscow, rumours that Nikolai Komlichenko, their new talisman, might not be available, might not be fit. But they have won 5 of their last 7 league games. That is seriously impressive form. And they, at the moment, as things stand, are in 6th place. Now, it's in a lot of people's interest that Dynamo Moscow qualify for Europe. They have a huge stadium, vastly expensive stadium in Petrovsky Park. The VAB Arena actually is a double stadium. It holds the hockey team as well as the football team. And it's a beautiful ground inside, I can assure you of that, but very expensive. I believe also Maximilian Philipp, who's on 7 goals, I believe is their top goal scorer. Yes, he is also potentially unavailable. Krasnodar, like I mentioned just now, are 3rd in the table, so it's a huge game as well. Possibly more implications involved than Zenit CSKA. But Krasnodar at home, yeah, I saw them earlier in March at home to Ufa, and they struggled to break Ufa down, but they did. They had that quality. Marcus Berg is going to be leaving at the end of the season as well, incidentally. So I think here, yeah, it's got to be a Krasnodar win. Do we see a lot of goals? Yeah, I do see a lot of goals, actually. I do. But I think the potential, and a lot hinges on Komlichenko and Philip being unavailable, but I'm assuming they are, so I'm going to go for Krasnodar to win. And you know what? I'm going to go for 3-0. I think Krasnodar will have that motivation behind them. Okay, it's a longer preview than usual because, for obvious reasons, it's the longest game we've ever had without the Predictions League. There are a lot of question marks still hanging over the progress to return from the coronavirus pandemic. Like I mentioned, the Rostov game is postponed, going into quarantine, which is a concern for the rest of the league. But we'll see what happens. We'll wake up tomorrow. I'm going to post this video, and I may have to post another one to correct it if further news comes out about games being cancelled. But guys, get your predictions in as early as you can. It's a Friday kickoff, and like I mentioned, that Friday early kickoff is 4 o'clock in the UK. So if you're at work, if you're back at work, then that's great news, of course. But it does mean, in terms of getting predictions in, you don't want to leave it till you're already in work on Friday. So get them in today, or get them in Thursday if you're watching this Thursday. 7 matches to predict, and we will update you as and when we know any confirmed news about the rest of the fixtures. The tables have been updated, and I will post them on the page as well. But guys, welcome back. Good luck.